Welcome to The Direct Line, the official podcast for OADSP. We're excited to have you here with us today, and if you have comments, suggestions, or if you want to join us in studio as a guest, reach out to me at podcast@oadsp.org.
I'm David Rustio, and today I am talking with Kara Brown, a superintendent. Welcome to the show, Kara.
Thank you, David. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to see you this morning. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've lived kind of all over the country. I was born in Oregon, and I frequently get asked if my dad was in the military, and the answer is no, he was in paper. But I did have the opportunity to live in Houston, Texas, southern Mississippi, finally graduated from high school in Wisconsin. So I've had every accent you can imagine, just about. I haven't lived in Boston.
Well, there's still time, right?
There's still time. Although my hope is to go south where the weather's warmer in the near future. But so having moved all over the country, I had a chance to experience lots of different cultures and ended up in Ohio because I had the opportunity to play softball at Kent State. So
wow,
never left. And I've been here since 1989.
1989. Tell us about being on a college soccer team.
Well, you know, I was thrilled. I was always an athlete. In fact, when I went to school, my goal was to become a sports psychologist, which we'll talk a little later about how I ended up in the field of developmental disabilities. But I wanted to be a sports psychologist. And actually, my freshman year at Kent, we were lucky enough to play in the College World Series in Oklahoma City and finish 7th in the country, which is pretty amazing for a little school like Kent State.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a great place to go to school. And believe it or not, I knew so little about Kent State before I went there. Learned a lot about the history after I got there. But,
sure.
And then ended up doing my graduate work in North Carolina. And
What part?
Greensboro, at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and had the opportunity to work under the sports psychologist that worked with people like Peekaboo Street, who some of the younger audience won't remember, but she was a skier back in the 90s. So that was a great experience. But having moved most of my life, chose to come back to Ohio after that. And with a master's degree, I was polishing jewelry and looking for a job. And that's actually how I fell into the field of developmental disabilities. But, you know, at this point, I have 2 kids. My oldest is in her 3rd year of med school, and my youngest is currently traveling across the country in his car, living out of his car, and should be home in about 10 days. But he was out working on a dude ranch in Wyoming. So
nice. Lots of experience, real life experience.
Real life experience, but as a parent, it's time to settle down. But we'll see. It's his life. He'll figure out what happens with that.
So what on earth do sports psychologists do?
Well, now I'm not sure. Back in the day, my goal was to work with professional athletes and college athletes. I was a 3-sport, 4-sport athlete. I would play anything I could get my hands on, and very much wanted to look at performance and help people improve their performance. And what I've learned as my career has gone on is that performance is performance, whether it's on an athletic field or it's in the classroom or it's in an office building. And it's about leadership and performance and how do you get better at what you do.
So that's helped even in your current role?
I believe so.
To prepare for it, yeah.
I believe so.
So since I brought that up, what the heck do you do for a living?
So I'm a superintendent for 2 county boards of developmental disabilities, and really that's just a way of saying I get to remove the barriers for the people doing the real work.
Okay.
I promised to share the story. I ended up in this field because, as I said earlier, I was polishing jewelry with a master's degree, and
it doesn't take a master's degree to be allowed to polish jewelry, right?
No, it really doesn't.
Okay. Just checking.
I can tell you how to get all those finishes on your rings and how to make them look good, but no, it doesn't take a master's degree. And so I was looking for my big girl job at that point, and a friend had called and said, hey, we're looking for a behavior specialist at the Tuscarawas County Board in Ohio. And I said, all right, because I can't keep polishing jewelry. So I went for that interview, and at the same time I was interviewing for a job at the Bureau of Workers' Comp, and thought, all right, well, we'll see what happens. So I went down the interview at the Board of Developmental Disabilities, and they asked me the question, how do you feel about restrooming people? And I thought, oh, that's not going to be easy. But like a good interviewee, I lied through my teeth and said, it'll be fine, no big deal. And as the interview went on, I remember thinking, please let the job of Bureau of Workers' Comp come through, because I'm not cut out for this. I had never, in hindsight, lived a really sheltered life, didn't really know anybody with a developmental disability, had participated in a program at my high school where we helped kids with disabilities in the pool.
Sure.
But that was 1 hour a week. Other than that, didn't know of anybody in my family, didn't have any friends, had never really been exposed to somebody. And I think like most people, I was pretty intimidated. I didn't know how to talk to, I didn't know if I knew how to talk to somebody with a disability. What if they didn't understand me? What if I didn't understand them? And remember feeling incredibly intimidated. And I didn't want to make a mistake. And that was 30 years ago. And clearly the job at the Bureau of Workers' Comp did not come through because I took the position with the Tuscarawas County Board, and that was 30 years ago. And it's been the best career I could have ever imagined that I never knew existed.
Right. I wonder why no one knows these jobs exist.
I think that many times we don't know what we don't need to know. So, as I said, I didn't know anybody with a disability, so I wasn't paying attention to that information. And today it's even harder. There's more information coming at us every day, and we filter out a lot. And part of our education efforts here at the board are really about helping people understand that we're here and what we do, because we hear frequently, well, what do you do? Which is shocking to me because we put out information all the time, but I think it speaks to people don't dial in unless they have a reason to. And, you know, if you're not hooked in with the developmental disability world, then I don't think you even know to ask the question.
Right. I mean, there's 100,000 plus DSPs just in the state of Ohio, but most people have never heard of a DSP. They
haven't. And you know, I think it's one of the most important jobs in our field. Now, you can't tell my SSAs I said that.
I won't.
But clearly that's another really important job. But it's one of the most important jobs. They're the ones doing the work. They're the boots on the ground. So we get to know people in the county board. We help write plans. We put all that information together. But the day in and the day out gets done through our DSPs. And, you know, I learned in the first week of work at my first job, which was a precursor to being an SSA, sure. I learned then that I was never cut out to be a DSP. And that's not meant to be disrespectful. That's the ultimate respect, because I knew I couldn't do it. It was too much. And I fully believe that that's where the work gets done. And that's the boots on the ground. And we need to support our DSPs in as many ways as we can, because the people we support depend on it. And we all care about the people we support.
Sure. So what would you say to somebody listening that has never heard about DSPs or even the work that we do? What would you say to them about encouraging them to look into this field or look into being a DSP? Because, you know, are there any perks? Are there any? Is it a good side?
I think there's lots of good sides to it. I think the opportunity to meet people and work with people who many times don't get the attention of people in our society, and the relationships are so rich. And it's a chance to help them take the next step in their life and see real progress. When you get to watch somebody go from maybe having just graduated high school or even college, and they've just left their parents' home, and they don't really know what comes next. And as a DSP, I get to help them find their first real job or help them find their life. I think that's the upside, is watching people grow and do things that maybe they never thought were possible, or maybe even we wondered whether or not it was possible, but they did it, and you have a part in making that happen. I think that, to me, that would be the ultimate joy that comes out of helping somebody who needs the support to live their daily lives.
I think a lot of DSPs see their job as one, they want to lose the individuals eventually because they've helped the individuals reach goals and become independent. Mm-hmm. and that's a hard turn when you've seen somebody and work with somebody who needs hands on everything, and then suddenly they can have their own place, you know.
And I think it is hard, but yet it's so fulfilling.
Right.
The first gentleman that I was hired to work with, and I was hired to work one-on-one with a young man who had lots of behaviors and had his reputation preceded him, and I was hired to work with him. And as I said, I had no experience in developmental disabilities and really had to figure out how to support somebody with physical behaviors.
Sure.
His job every day, now it was back in the days of the sheltered workshop, and so it was very repetitive work. For 9 months, 5 days a week, I worked with him hand over hand to do the same job, which was fairly straightforward in that you took a paint stick, put a paper towel over it, slid it in a pocket. Sure. And you did that 3 times, and then you wiped a big pocket, and one was done. And for 9 months we did that, and it looked the same every single day. And then something happened on the 9th-month first day, and he did it by himself.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, wow, I'd have given up a long time ago. But because I wasn't given a choice, right, I don't own the fact that we stuck with it so long. I wasn't given a choice but to help him. He did it, but it took a really long time. And I think that's the opportunities DSPs get, because when they work with somebody for a really long time, maybe they don't want to keep doing what they're doing, but the plan says and the person says, I want to keep doing it. And then all of a sudden something great happens in a way that we never would have expected. And I really think that would be the rewarding part of it. And just helping somebody to become part of their community, not just in it, but a part of it, and strengthening the fabric of their life and our community, to me, is really the rewarding part. And I think that goes beyond DSP I would say that's probably the most rewarding part of what we all do. Mm-hmm. But the DSPs are the ones that are really making a difference.
They absolutely are. So we know your title, but what on earth does a superintendent of a county board do?
Sit in meetings.
Okay, that sounds fun.
There's truth to that, but I think that I really see my role as removing barriers for folks to get done what they need to get done for the people we serve. You know, if I can answer a question quickly, if I can give them an answer that makes their jobs easier, then I want to be able to do that. Sure. And, you know, I think my staff will tell you that I talk about know your why. And when I really, really try to drive into what is my why, it's really about helping somebody reach their full potential. And whether that's an employee or through our employees and our DSPs, the people we serve, that's really my why. And this has been one of the most fulfilling opportunities that I've ever had. And I get to do it from a big picture place.
Sure.
You know, I've over the last 10 years, I've lost my ability to really talk about the specifics of what waivers and plans and services look like. That sounds
so much fun.
But I get to be a part of saying, hey, I want you to be the person that works on inclusion. Mm. And I have the ability, through the approval of our board, to say, I want to dedicate somebody who is helping people with disabilities become part of their community. Let's stop creating programs. Because we have a tendency to create programs, and then we say things like, well, people with disabilities should be just like everybody else, but then we don't know how to remove the program.
Right.
So let's not create it in the first place. Let's help people get involved with their communities. And I get to be a part of saying, we're dedicating budget money to that. Now go do it. Well, how? I don't know. You figure that out.
Right.
Right? Like I'm turning you
big
loose.
Picture.
I am big picture. And I've grown to like that. There was a time when I was really in all of the details, but I've grown and learned to really enjoy the big picture piece. And again, trying to open doors and remove barriers for people to go do really cool stuff. And I'm not the most creative person around. That's not my strength. But I have people who are really, really good at being creative and think very differently. And if I can turn them loose, I think that's my job.
We'll be right back. Most places in the world experience some kind of winter weather. Cold, snow, ice, gray skies, you get the picture. And it's straight science that months of that has a negative impact on our outlooks and energies. But OADSP has a solution, our Beat the Winter Blues series. From January to early spring, we offer activities and happenings meant to break up the monotony of chilly, dreary winter days. From virtual dance parties and paint and sip events to regional travel and adventures in exciting locations, nearly all of OADSP's Beat the Winter Blues occasions are meant for anyone, DSPs and the individuals they support, family members, other staff, and so on. And anyone who's attended an event will tell you that, for at least a little bit, we did, in fact, beat the winter blues. Check the calendar for scheduled Beat the Winter Blues events at oadsp.org. And now back to the show.
Now, earlier we talked about SSAs. What does that mean? What is an SSA?
So an SSA is a service and support administrator. They're the people responsible for kind of leading the team, guiding the team, building a relationship with the person so that we're getting really good information from them, because it is our role as the county board to assess people's needs and identify resources and funding and authorize that funding. So they have to get to know people. And some people might talk about it as case management, but it's so much more than case management. We ask them to know the person's most intimate needs because that's how we make sure they get their needs met.
Sure.
And so I see them working really closely with DSPs and providers. And our goal is to have really good relationships with our providers, because at the end of the day, we're talking about a person, not a widget, not a car.
Right.
We're in Union County. We do lots of cars here. Our role is to make sure the person gets what they need, and we do that through relationships. So it's about knowing resources. It's about helping the person know what they need, and writing a plan really that everybody can use, because while we talk about it being for the person, it's really for the professionals in the room to know how to support a person best. So I think that's their role, and they're vital. They're vital in making sure a person gets what they need.
How do you support the SSAs?
They've got a big job.
Yes, they do.
Lots of the jobs in our field are big jobs. We're talking about people's lives, but we put a lot on our SSAs from the county board perspective to, as I already said, know a person's needs, write it down, make sure everybody understands it, and then monitor to make sure it's being delivered the way it's supposed to. And not only is it a lot of work, it's a lot of pressure, because you hold people's lives in your hand. And at the end of the day, you don't walk out and think, phew, I'm glad that last car was done. You walk out thinking, boy, I hope Michael makes it through the night tonight,
Right.
and doesn't get in trouble. And to support them can be difficult. We talk a lot about make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you're taking your time off. Of course, then they all look at me and say, but when I take time off, I come back with a lot more work to do. I understand that.
Every job.
But, trying to make sure they feel supported, it can be difficult. There's a lot of conflict in terms of what people sitting at the table think is best for a person, what the person wants for themselves, and supporting them to know how to handle that, supporting them in when the job gets really tough, being there for them to support them emotionally as well, because, that's another big piece of the job that's not in the job description.
Right. So how do they work through those difficult meetings when people around the table who all care about the individual don't agree on what should be happening after the meeting?
I think many of them would say that's the toughest part of their job. And we offer them training about how to do it. But again, that's that relational piece and that personal piece that isn't just about sitting through a training. And some folks are better at it than others. It's a case-by-case basis. I think you try to find out what it is that everybody really wants, because sometimes I think we want the same thing, but we come at it from different perspectives. So how do you critically evaluate what is it everybody wants? And then at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what anybody wants. It matters what the person we serve wants.
Sure.
So, I mean, we can try to manage all of that conflict and all of the disagreement and even the agreement at times. But at the end of the day, it's about what the person wants. And short of it being a concern about their health or their safety, I think we default to what the person wants.
I'm not only in this field, but I also have 3 grandchildren with a developmental disability, autism. And I'm lucky enough to have had a great friend with a boy with autism that we used to travel with. When he passed, I became the guardian of this young man. I sometimes, sorry, Jack, I sometimes wholeheartedly disagree with the SSA and say, I don't think that's the right thing to do. And Jack is a great guy. But sometimes he says no to me. And I don't like that. You know, it's not like I don't know the field and the rules, but you're right in that they have responsibilities that are different from the guardian and they're different from the providers, and sometimes they have to, bring down the boom. How do you help SSAs who, are facing that and really wanting to do the right thing, but they know the message is not going to be well received?
We encourage them to keep the person that we serve at the front of their decision making, sure, or at the front of their recommendations, and do what's right for the person. One of our core values here is integrity, and we define that as do the right thing.
Sure.
That's a pretty loose definition. And to your point, what you think is the right thing and what I think is the right thing isn't always the same. So what we try to encourage them to do is keep the person at the center of the conversation. And I think what's hard for them when they're looking at a guardian is a lot of times what that tends to mean is we're pushing something that feels riskier than what
Absolutely.
The guardian is comfortable with. And the person is pushing for something riskier because they want to live their life. And I think it's hard to look at a guardian or a parent and say, no, we can't give you what you want because we're bound to the person we serve. And I think that's really hard. But if you're really about the people we serve, then the higher purpose there is to advocate for them and give them a voice when it's hard. And I think most of us have experienced when it's hard to stand up to our parents.
Sure.
And so for people with disabilities, I think it's doubly hard. In some cases, they haven't had a voice all their life, or it wasn't as loud as maybe what it needed to be to get what they want, and now they have somebody in the room who'll help them. But I think it's hard because what we're saying is this person wants risk. And as parents and guardians, we want to take care of people. But I think back to some of the things I've done in my life and decisions I've made, and if my parents had had a choice, they'd have probably said no. But as an adult,
you don't have that option.
You don't have that option. And so many of the folks we serve find themselves in that position their entire life.
Yep.
And it feels like a little bit of a higher purpose to say, no, Michael wants this. And I know you want to keep him safe, but he wants to live his life, and this is how he wants to do it.
And it can't be in bubble wrap.
No, as much as we want to put them there. Even, I have 2 adult children. I'd like to put them in bubble wrap, but it doesn't work that way. And they don't let me. But I think many times kids with disabilities don't get that, for lack of better terms, clean break from the family that the rest of us will demand if we don't get it.
And Jack is usually right. So if he calls you...
Careful, I wouldn't give an SSA that much power either. But
but it's different because I have a different relationship with this guy, the person I'm guardian of. Known him for years. I love this kid. Well, he's 30, but he looks 16 and acts 16. But the SSA, when Jack fights back, he's usually right, and I just don't like it. So,
yeah, most of us don't like when our kids or our friends that we're keeping an eye on tell us no and don't let us do what we want to do.
My kids have never allowed me to say no. I have 3 very strong-willed children. But I love that about them. They've each got their own personalities, just like all the people that we serve do. Mm-hmm. So, tell us something. We've talked deep, but this is good. Tell us something fun or enjoyable, or talk about somebody.
So, there's been lots of stories throughout the year, and lots of people who have touched my life because I had a chance to work with them. Probably the one that stands out, we had a chance to help a family. Holy cow, it's been a long time ago now, but we were building a home for them. The son was kind of known for destroying the house, and so there were, as a house was being built, we did some things like put in hurricane glass in the windows, and the drywall was all fireproof drywall because it was harder to put a hole in. And
sure,
you get the idea. And his mom is very private, but got to know them pretty well, and really enjoyed being around her son. And probably one of the favorite things. So we had spent a lot of time looking at the house as it was being built and touring different things and spending time with his family. And at one point, her son, who I think he was probably, he might have been 16 at the time, asked me if he got to take his shoulder with him when he moved. And I said, I'm sorry, can you say that again? And he in fact said, can I take my shoulder with me? And you know, he was a big guy at 16. He was probably 6'5".
Wow.
Today he wears like a size 22 shoe. I once saw him hold a Whopper, and
Holy
it looked,
smoke.
Yeah, the Whopper in his hand looked like a slider from White Castle. You know, so to have this big guy say to me, "Can I take my shoulder?" It just tickled me, and it's a story that I still have until this day. And his mom actually at one point gave me one of his shoes because he was also known for throwing stuff away. So I have a dress shoe of his that's a size 22. And if you've never been around a size 22 shoe, which by the way is Shaq size.
Okay.
When you put your foot in, your toes don't really come to the end of the tongue. And if you put it on end, the tip of it will go, I'm about 5'7", so that gives you a little context. The tip will go from my foot, and the tip is at my knee.
Wow.
It is a big shoe. Anyway, his mom had given it to me, and I keep it on my desk as a kind of conversation piece. And everybody that comes in asks me about the shoe.
And it gives you a great story to tell.
It does give me a great story to tell, and he really to this day makes me smile, and he's a good guy.
And thank goodness, because at that size, you want him to be a good guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, this has been fun.
It has been.
Thank you so much for allowing me to come and talk to you today, and for sharing the stories and speaking so well to our DSPs and the work that they do.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for the opportunity. It's not very often I get to talk about the last 30 years, but you know, when it, as I said before, when it comes to DSPs, I think they are the day-to-day lifeblood of what we do, and we need to find ways to make sure they're able to do their jobs, they're able to do them well, and we're supporting them in as many ways as we can to keep doing the good work. Thank you.
Day.
You too.
Thanks for listening, and join us next time on The Direct Line.